All right, welcome back. So here we are in the graphical user interface use of our employees DLL that we created earlier in the human resources project. So I have this Windows form up with an employee list with a list box created. And over here I have the method that will main form dash load. So remember, this is the method that gets fired right before the graphical user interface is visible to the user. So very similar to the console application, I've created a new employee manager. I have a reference here to the employee manager or human resources here. So that's fixed up. So that's one of the advantages of the DLL is that I'm able to use the same code in multiple projects. I used it in the console app, and here I am using it in a graphical user interface. The code for employee manager is the same. So I call the new employee manager, EM, and then I call populate. That'll populate the pre-built list of employees. And right away I run into a problem. So I need to populate my list box with the employees. And here, remember, employees is a private data member. So of course I can't access it here because it's private. So there's a couple of ways you could think about this. I could make it public, and that of course would violate encapsulation. But it would work. It's public, and so the compiler would allow me to access it. The other thing I could do is return. I could make a property that returned a reference to this employees, but that breaks encapsulation too. It's just one level indirect to it, because once I return a reference to the full list of employee, then the caller can do anything they want to it, including modify it, delete it, do whatever they want to it, because I've returned a reference to it. So if I return a reference to one moment. So if I return a reference even to a private class, a modifiable reference, I've broken encapsulation. There's a solution to it, and I'll show you to that when we return from my pause. So here is my solution to my encapsulation problem. .NET offers a read-only collection of employee. So the read-only collection is a wrapper around this list that won't allow the caller to modify it. Read-only. So it's actually a lightweight wrapper. It doesn't make a copy of the collection. It wraps it and returns a handle that can only be read from. So if the employees modify and you do the read-only collection again, you'll get those modifications. So in use, so that property is called that property is called employees. In the use of it here, employees, and here I pull out individual employees and then add to my collection. Okay, run it, and there you see this. The name of this, and that depends on of course on the toString method. You can add any object to my list box items, and then it uses the toString method in order to convert it to a string for display in the list, pointing out really the importance of the toString method in these languages as a way to transmit your information into a graphical user interface or into a console application. So I think I'm displaying too much information about employees. I want to simplify this so it's just the name of the employee and not show the salary here. So let's look back at here, the employee manager. And the employee manager has this toString method, but that drills into the employees here. And this E is represents the employee, and that also has a toString method. So let's look at the employees toString method. So you go from the collections toString method, and then down to the employees toString method, and that's where we'll see the salary. So I'll modify this here, take out the salary from my toString method, and then I'll stop this and run it again. Everything gets compiled. And you can see, and now I just see the name of the employee. The next thing I want to do is show that I can click on an employee and bring up another dialog that'll show the detail of that employee. Okay, so next we're going to drill into the employees that'll be listed here. So if I double click here, I'll get this method here, employees list dot box selected index change. So we know that an employee has been selected. And then you have to know which employee got selected, and that's actually from the employees list box itself. Um, Selected item. Okay. Now notice selected item is going to return just an object here. Look at the IntelliSense popping up there. So object is of course the base class. One moment. Okay, so I've been interrupted a few times on this as I've done it, so I hope this makes sense still. So I have the employee's selected item. That returns an object, but remember we added the full up object to this items category here, and then we display it via toString. So when this returns the selected item, it should be the employee that we added. So we'll check this here. Here. And this is actually called a downcast. Since it's taking the object and downcasting it in the object hierarchy. Remember, everything inherits from object, so we're downcasting into the object hierarchy. If this is not really an employee, this will encounter a throw here. Let's put a breakpoint here, and we'll see if this works. And we have the employee here. And the downcast we would have had thrown already, and we can see that the selected item is the employee that we need. So now we're ready to write a dialog box that will be the detail of the employee, or in your case of the milestone, the detail of the item that you're either modifying or removing or adding to. So I need to add another form for my detail. So I right click here, do add, new form. I'll call it employee detail. So that there we have our employee detail, and we'll develop that. I'm going to go off screen and write and put the employee detail controls here, and I'll return later. So my internal name for it will be employee detail form, and I've changed the title also to be employee detail. You see that here. Next, I'll add the controls. All right, I've added the employee detail form. I have it here. I did one modification. So employee detail form, Visual Studio will create this without a parameter. Here I added a parameter here of the employee, and remember it here so that I can populate the form with the selected employee. I'll come back and show you that in a second. So I'll click on the form, and then I have the load for form. Remember, this gets fired as soon as the form is about to be shown to the user after it's been properly constructed. However, so employee should be populated by the time this is fired. I'll do it next. So I didn't add labels to my control, so yours is going to have to look better than mine. But I do have text box last name, text box first name, and text box salary here. And those are the elements that I'm going to be populating in here. So now I have that filled in. Text box last name is the employee last name first, and then first name, and then the salary. I have to do toString on it, of course, because this is a decimal type that we have to use for all human created numbers that have a floating point. So as before, I have my selected index changed, and I showed this. You have the employee. Now all I have to do is hook up the dialog box employee detail to the main form here. So I've modified this so it'll show the employee detail. There's actually quite a lot to show here, so I'll proceed with it. So we saw this before, so I have an employee detail form. I'm creating the object here. Remember, I changed the constructor so that it took the employee object. Here I'm taking the general object, the selected item, has returned, and I'm downcasting it into an employee. Setting this up here. Let's look at the detail form here. And I realized I broke form by using a lowercase letter here for the employee detail form, but I'm not going to change it right now. So we have the constructor that I showed before. We remember what the constructor is. We update the text boxes here right before the form is about to be shown to the user. And then on OK, we do here, the on OK button is clicked. That's the on OK button that's defined here. We have one more thing to talk about the OK button in a moment. Here I'm going the opposite direction. I'm taking from the text box, assigning it to the employee, assigning the last name. I'm just updating the private employee object that I have here. Pardon me. Here I try parse the salary, make sure I don't fault if in case they typed in something stupid for the salary. I update the salary, then close. This is important. This causes the form to close. Let's look at it from the main form's perspective. Here I have the employee. This is the downcast here. I create the employee, and then I do show dialog. So this will show the dialog on the screen. And then if the dialog box is okay, that is, they didn't hit the X button, or if there's a cancel button there, I make sure that the dialog result is okay, because there's other ways to dismiss a dialog other than hitting the OK button. One more thing about that, in the design view here, in order for the form to have the OK result, you have to put a special property in the OK button here. It's called dialog result. All buttons have those. By default, it's none, but you need to modify this so that when the dialog is dismissed, the caller knows how it was dismissed. In this case, dialog result OK. That's how this code knows that the dialog result was dismissed with that button. Then I have another property, not an automatic property, so a little bit more elaborate, edited employee. It only has a get, and it returns employee. I couldn't call it employee because the same name as employee here, so I called it edited employee. Let's see how this runs. So let's click Yeti Cookieville. We see it's constructed there. Hit continue. Now I have the edited detail. I can change anything I want. Let's change this to cookie. And cookie is having a dramatic salary cut here. Hit OK. Then on OK button click has happened. I have the edited text. Didn't change the first name. One line at a time. F10. Dialog result is 140. I update the salary from 140,000 to 140. Then close. That closes the dialog that was opened. Then I hit this breakpoint here, which is right after the show dialog button, but the object is still existing, so we can take a look at it. Remember, it's an entire form, so it has lots of properties. But the other property that we added was the edited employee, so we should be able to find it down here. There we go. So drill into that, and you can see it has successfully been edited. I didn't do anything more with it, just show it in the debugger that it worked, but this should show you all the mechanical details necessary to get started on your actual work for, I think, Milestone 5, because all you had to do for Milestone, the previous Milestone, is just the console text driver. This will get you started on Milestone 5. Good luck.